So, if you're anything like me, your social media feeds are probably flooded with these super slick 1-minute videos. You know the ones: YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks, all showing these supposedly genius woodworking hacks that promise to change your life. They make everything look so easy, so perfect. You see someone slap a piece of tape on some wood, make a cut, and boom, a flawless edge. Or they'll wipe on some magic sauce and suddenly a huge mistake just vanishes. It's mesmerizing to watch, and you can't help but wonder, does that actually work? Well, I've been wondering the exact same thing. It seems like for every genuinely useful tip, there are at least 10 more that are, let's say, scientifically questionable. So, I decided to put my skepticism to the test. I picked 3 of the most viral woodworking hacks I could find, the ones that show up on my feed almost daily, and I'm not just going to give them a quick try. I'm going to replicate them as they're shown online. No shortcuts, no special tools they don't show, and no secret techniques. We're going full nerd on this with a proper scientific approach. My goal here is simple: to separate fact from fiction. We're going to be the myth busters of the woodworking world today. Are these viral trends genuinely brilliant shortcuts that we should all be using, or are they just clever video editing and wishful thinking designed to get views? By the end of this, we'll know for sure which of these hacks are workshop-worthy and which ones belong in the digital trash can. Let's get our hands dirty and find out. Alright, first up is a hack I see at least 5 times a day: using painter's tape to prevent tear-out when cutting plywood. The videos make it look like a miracle cure. You just lay a strip of blue tape along your cut line, run your circular saw over it, peel it back, and you're left with an edge so clean you could eat off it. It seems too good to be true, which is usually a red flag for me. But hey, the core idea, that the tape supports the top wood fibers and prevents them from splintering, has a tiny bit of scientific plausibility. So, let's give it a fair shot. I grabbed a standard sheet of birch plywood, which is notorious for tear-out, especially on the top veneer. For our control group, I made a cut with no tape at all. As expected, it was a splintery mess. The saw blade's upward rotating teeth just ripped those delicate top fibers to shreds. Now, for the viral method. I carefully applied a strip of high-quality painter's tape, making sure to press it down firmly along the entire cut line, just like they do in the videos. I wanted to give this hack the absolute best chance to succeed. I held my breath, made the cut right down the center of the tape, and then, slowly, dramatically, peeled it back. And the result? It was okay, I guess. I mean, it was definitely a little bit better than the control cut. There were fewer of the big, nasty splinters, but was it the perfectly clean, factory-quality edge the videos promised? Absolutely not. You could still see plenty of small fibers that had been torn away, creating a fuzzy, slightly jagged edge. It was an improvement, but a very minor one. So, I decided to take this a step further. What if the tape wasn't the real hero here? I switched to a brand new high tooth count blade designed specifically for plywood, a finish blade. I made another cut, this time with no tape. The difference was night and day. The edge was nearly perfect, far cleaner than the tape method with the old blade. This tells us something crucial: the quality and type of your saw blade are doing 95% of the work. The tape is like a placebo. It makes you feel like you're doing something, but the real solution is elsewhere. Ultimately, this hack falls into the technically not wrong, but practically useless category. If you're in a pinch with a dull blade, sure, tape might help a tiny bit, but it's not a substitute for the fundamentals: using the right blade for the job, making sure it's sharp, and using a zero clearance insert if you really want flawless cuts. The viral videos conveniently leave out the part where they're probably using a brand new, expensive blade to begin with. This one is busted. Okay, let's move on to hack number 2. This one is all about getting stronger glue joints, specifically on end grain. If you've ever tried to glue the end of one board to the face of another, you know it's a recipe for a weak joint. The end grain acts like a bundle of tiny straws, sucking the glue deep into the wood and starving the joint itself. The viral hack proposes a simple solution. Before your main glue up, you prime the end grain by rubbing a thin layer of glue into it, letting it soak in for a few minutes, and applying your final bead of glue for the joint. The theory here is actually rock solid. By pre-sealing those straws with that first layer of glue, you're creating a less porous surface. This means the second main application of glue will stay right at the surface where it's needed to form a strong bond between the two pieces of wood. It's like painting a wall. You use a primer first to seal the surface so your top coat doesn't just get absorbed. I was optimistic about this one, but a good scientist always tests the hypothesis. So, I set up a side-by-side comparison. I prepared 2 identical T-joints using scrap pieces of pine. For the first joint, our control, I did it the old-fashioned way, just applied a normal amount of wood glue to the end grain and clamped it to the face of the other board. For the second joint, I followed the viral hack precisely. I worked a small amount of glue into the end grain with my finger, waited about 5 minutes for it to get tacky and soak in, then applied a second, fresh bead of glue before clamping it up exactly like the first one. I labeled them clearly and left them to cure for a full 24 hours. The next day was Judgment Day. To test the strength, I clamped the base of each T-joint to my workbench and prepared for some good old-fashioned destructive testing. I started with the control joint, the one without the priming step. I applied downward pressure to the end of the board, and it didn't take much effort at all. With a sad little, the joint failed completely. It was a clean break, with very little wood fiber pulled away, which tells you the glue bond itself was the weak link. Then came the moment of truth for our hacked joint. I applied pressure, then more pressure. I started putting my body weight into it, and the wood was visibly flexing, but the joint was holding strong. It took a ridiculous amount of force before it finally failed, and when it did, it wasn't a clean break at the glue line. Instead, huge chunks of wood fiber were ripped out from the face grain of the other board. This is the sign of a perfect glue joint. The bond was literally stronger than the wood itself. This hack is 100% legit. It's a keeper. And now for our third and final hack, the one that seems the most like magic. You've seen this, right? A woodworker has a project with some dents, scratches, or even a bit of ugly grain. They grab their can of Danish oil or polyurethane, wipe it on, and, poof, the mistake is gone. And the wood looks flawless and beautiful. The implication is that the finish itself is some kind of miracle eraser that can hide imperfections. This one set off all my alarm bells. As someone who has spent countless hours finishing wood, this goes against everything I know. My working theory was that not only would this work, but it would actually do the opposite and make the mistakes even more noticeable. A wood finish, especially an oil-based one, is designed to penetrate the wood and enhance its natural character by adding depth and contrast. It makes light parts of the grain look lighter and dark parts look darker. So, logically, if you have a dark scratch or a compressed, dark dent, the finish is just going to soak into that area and make it even darker and more obvious. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's test it. I took a nice piece of ash and deliberately abused it. I put a few shallow scratches on it with a screw, made a couple of dents by dropping a hammer on it, and even left a pencil mark for good measure. It was a perfectly imperfect test subject. I set up my camera for a nice close-up, grabbed my can of oil finish, and prepared to replicate the magic I'd seen online. I poured a generous amount of finish onto a rag, just like in the videos, ready for the grand reveal. I wiped the finish across the board, covering all the damaged areas, and the result was exactly what I predicted. It was a complete and utter disaster. The finish didn't hide anything. It put a giant, flashing neon sign on every single flaw. The scratches, which were barely visible before, turned into dark, ugly lines. The dents became dark, shadowy craters. Even the faint pencil mark I left on the surface suddenly stood out like it was drawn with a Sharpie. The finish soaked into every imperfection and amplified it. This hack is not just wrong, it's actively bad advice. It's the equivalent of trying to hide a stain on a white shirt by pouring water on it. You just end up with a bigger, more obvious wet spot. The only way this works in those viral videos is through a combination of deceptive camera angles, specific lighting that hides the flaws, and maybe even swapping the board out between shots. The real way to fix these mistakes is through proper prep work. Sanding, steam treating dents, and careful surface preparation. A single drop of finish is ever applied. This one is worse than busted. It's a trap. So, after all that, what did we learn? We saw that one of these viral hacks was genuinely brilliant and will now be a permanent part of my workflow, but the other two were complete duds, with one of them actually making the problem worse. This really drives home a critical point. Just because something looks quick, easy, and amazing in a 30-second video doesn't mean it holds up to scrutiny in the real world. These short-form videos are designed for entertainment and views, not necessarily for accurate education. They often leave out the most important context. The takeaway here isn't to distrust everything you see online, but to approach it with a healthy dose of scientific curiosity. Instead of blindly copying a technique, take a second to ask it's supposed to work. With the end grain glue up, the science made sense, and the test proved it. With the tape and the finish, the underlying logic was shaky at best, and the results showed it. Understanding the principles behind the process, the physics of a saw blade, the chemistry of a wood finish, the biology of wood grain, is far more valuable than memorizing 100 hacks. Ultimately, the best tool you can have in your workshop is your own brain. Be skeptical, be curious, and be willing to run your own little experiments. Don't just take someone's word for it, not even mine. Test things for yourself. You'll not only avoid the pitfalls of bad advice, but you'll also develop a much deeper and more intuitive understanding of your craft. That's a foundation that will serve you far better than any viral trend ever could. Thanks for coming along on this myth-busting adventure, and I'll see you in the next one.